Breaking news! A catastrophic 7.7 magnitude earthquake has struck Myanmar, leaving over 2,000 dead and thousands more injured. Entire buildings have collapsed, cities like Mandalay are in ruins, and rescue efforts are struggling against fuel shortages and power outages. Welcome to TVAI, bringing you the latest global developments. The earthquake has devastated Myanmar at a time when the country is already in turmoil. The military junta, locked in conflict with rebel forces, continues its airstrikes on villages, even as survivors of the disaster cry out for aid. The situation is growing more desperate by the hour. International responses are pouring in. The WHO has dispatched 3 tons of medical supplies, while China and India have deployed rescue teams. Meanwhile, Indonesia has sent 37 personnel and 12 tons of aid to assist in relief efforts. But with roads destroyed and communication networks down, can Myanmar's people get the help they desperately need? And how will this crisis impact the ongoing civil conflict? Stay with us for the latest updates. As the world watches, Myanmar finds itself facing a dual crisis: a natural disaster of immense scale and a political struggle that refuses to relent. The military junta, which took power in a coup in 2021, has been embroiled in a brutal civil war against ethnic armed groups and pro-democracy forces. This conflict has already displaced over 1 million people. And now, the earthquake has pushed the country further into chaos. Reports from the ground indicate that thousands of buildings have crumbled, including hospitals, schools, and religious sites. Entire neighborhoods have been reduced to rubble. Survivors are desperately searching for their loved ones amid the debris, while emergency services are overwhelmed with the scale of destruction. Many areas remain inaccessible due to landslides and damaged infrastructure. According to eyewitnesses, the quake struck with unrelenting force, shaking buildings for nearly a minute. People ran into the streets in terror as structures collapsed around them. "It felt like the end of the world," said one survivor from Mandalay, describing how the shaking left their home in ruins. "We barely made it out alive." Rescue teams, both local and international, are working tirelessly to locate survivors. However, their efforts are hindered by a severe lack of resources. The military government, already facing international sanctions, is struggling to coordinate an effective response. Critically needed medical supplies, food, and shelter remain in short supply, and many survivors are spending their nights in the open, exposed to the elements. The United Nations has called for an immediate humanitarian response, urging nations to set aside political differences to help the people of Myanmar. However, the junta's tight control over aid distribution has raised concerns. In past disasters, the military has been accused of diverting aid to support its own forces rather than distributing it to those in need. There are already reports suggesting that rebel-held areas may be denied assistance, leaving thousands of people without any help. Meanwhile, satellite images show widespread destruction across the affected regions. Cities like Sagaing, Bago, and Naypyidaw have also suffered extensive damage. The economic impact is expected to be devastating, with businesses, factories, and farmlands destroyed. Experts warn that Myanmar's already struggling economy could collapse further, plunging more citizens into poverty. Adding to the chaos, the junta has continued its military operations despite the catastrophe. Rebel forces accuse the government of prioritizing its war efforts over humanitarian aid. The resistance groups, including the Karen National Union, KNU, and the People's Defense Force, PDF, have pledged to provide relief in their controlled areas, but their resources are limited. This tragedy comes as Myanmar is already experiencing one of the worst humanitarian crises in Asia. Since the 2021 coup, international sanctions have crippled the economy, food shortages have worsened, and human rights abuses have skyrocketed. The earthquake has only deepened this suffering. Countries around the world have responded. China and India, Myanmar's largest neighbors, were among the first to send aid, offering medical teams and essential supplies. Thailand and Japan have also pledged support. However, with major roads blocked and airports damaged, delivering aid remains a significant challenge. The United States has expressed concern about the situation, calling for unrestricted access for humanitarian organizations. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has urged Myanmar's military leaders to allow international relief efforts to operate freely. "This is a moment for unity and compassion," Blinken stated. "The people of Myanmar should not be left to suffer alone." However, with political tensions still high, some analysts warn that aid efforts could be politicized. The junta has a history of limiting foreign involvement in humanitarian crises, fearing that external forces may undermine its control. This raises fears that vital supplies could be delayed or even blocked entirely. Meanwhile, survivors are left with little choice but to rely on community-driven efforts and international humanitarian groups. Volunteers are stepping up, using social media to coordinate rescue efforts, share information, and locate missing persons. In the midst of tragedy, the resilience of Myanmar's people is shining through. Experts warn that the aftershocks could continue for weeks, increasing the risk of further collapses and landslides. The psychological impact is also immense, with thousands of people now suffering from trauma and stress. Mental health support is urgently needed, but remains scarce. As the world watches this unfolding disaster, questions remain. Can Myanmar's people receive the help they need before it's too late? Will the military regime allow aid to flow freely, or will politics interfere with relief efforts? The international community must act swiftly. Myanmar's crisis is not just a national issue. It is a humanitarian emergency that requires global cooperation. The decisions made in the coming days will determine the fate of thousands. One thing is certain: this earthquake has left Myanmar at a crossroads. Will the government step up and put the needs of its people first, or will bureaucratic obstacles slow down relief efforts? Will international aid agencies be allowed to work freely, or will political tensions block assistance from reaching those most in need? As countries continue to assess the scale of the disaster, Myanmar's people remain in limbo, waiting for help, hoping for relief, and struggling to survive in the ruins of their cities. The world must not turn a blind eye. Myanmar's tragedy is not just a crisis, it is a test of global solidarity. Every moment counts, and every act of support can mean the difference between life and death. We will continue to monitor the situation closely. Stay tuned for more updates as this crisis develops.